Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Alrighty, let's take a quick look at circles. Labels of different parts of circles, essentially the bits and the bobs. So here's the bits and the bobs of circles. We will start with what I would consider to be the first place to start when you're talking about a circle, and that is the diameter. Others may not label circles in the same order that I'm about to, but that is really irrelevant. We're going to do all the labels regardless of which order anyway. But I'm starting with diameter. Now diameter is this thing. Oh, missed the center. There we go, straight through. That is the diameter. The diameter of a circle is a straight line from one side of the circle, passing through the center of the circle and going all the way across to the other side. So this purple line that I've just drawn there is the diameter of a circle. Now, if you actually only do half of that, well, that brings you to the radius. So the radius is just from the middle out to the edge. There we go, that's radius. Let's call it R. And if we go back to diameter, let's call that D for diameter, R for radius, which is essentially just half of the diameter. That's a terrible R. Let's try again. I'm also trying to be careful on my screen because at the moment my computer looks like this. Yes, I didn't so much drop it. It was in a bag with some heavy stuff and the bag was kind of put down pretty quickly and yeah, too hard. So anyway, I'm trying not to cut myself on the broken glass that I'm currently working with, but back to circles, that's the radius, half of the diameter. Now, the next thing I'm going to look at is sector. Now, some of these you've possibly heard of before, like you've hopefully come across the diameter and the radius before, and that's cool. If you have, brilliant. If not, that's okay. We're covering it now. But a sector is the next one I'm going to go, because for a sector, we have two radii. Plural of radius is radii. So let's have two of those. Now, what we see we've done here is made a bit of a wedge shape. And this is what we call a sector inside there. So to form a sector, it's the wedge shape that is formed between two radii. So this line was the radius, and that's the radius there as well. And in between those two radii, we have a sector, that wedge shape there. And we move on to the circumference. Now the circumference is the the circle's special word for perimeter. So we're looking at the perimeter, and if we remember about breaking apart words, meter simply means you're going to measure something, and peri means the outside. So the perimeter is just the outside measurement. So yes, we are talking about that red line that goes all the way around the circle. Now, this is going to be hard for me to draw around the circle, but I'll give it a bash. Something like this. Yeah, hey, that actually wasn't too bad, given my shaky nature and the conditions that I'm working with. So there we go. All the way around the outside, that is the circumference. All the way around the outside of the circle, around the perimeter. Like I say, other shapes, you'd just say, the perimeter of the rectangle, or the perimeter of whatever polygon it is. But for a circle, we give it a special name, the circumference. But it is just the perimeter around the outside. Now, what if we don't go all the way around the outside? Well, that gives us an arc. Let's follow that circumference around. I'll try and sketch a bit to make the purple thicker so you can see it. Let's just say I go this much of the circumference, not all the way around, but it is following the circumference. This is what we have as our arc. And it is an arc. Like, hopefully in just general language, if someone said an arc, you would think some sort of curvy shape. That's an arc. This is an arc. There's an arc there. Well, these are essentially parts of the circumference of a circle, aren't they? So part of the circumference is our arc. Oh, since we're labeling, we should go back to circumference. This purple line going around, capital C for circumference. There we go. And so then we had part of that was an arc. Now, what if we don't follow the circumference, But if we start at one point of the circle, go to another point of a circle, join those 2 points with a straight line. In fact, maybe I should draw the line first. Nope, I can go from a point to a point. Brilliant. So that line that I've just drawn, that is a chord from one part of the circle to another part. Now, if that chord happened to pass through the center of the circle, well, that would be the diameter, wouldn't it? So a chord through the center is the diameter, but a chord doesn't have to go through the center. It's just from one part of the circle crossing over to another part of the circle. And we move on to this, a segment. Well, a segment, we need a chord to make a segment actually. So let's just draw some random chord back in. There we go, there's a chord. Now that you can see that chord has actually split the circle into 2 parts. We've got a larger part down below and a smaller part up above. But those parts are segments. So this is a segment here. So it's the part that's been sectioned off by a chord. Let's just relabel that as well. That line going through there, that was our chord. And above that we have a segment. But actually, below that, we have another segment, because a segment doesn't have to be just the smaller part of it. It could include the center of the circle and be more, so it's more than half the circle. So what we do is we call this smaller part the minor segment, and that of course would make the larger part the major segment. So when you have a segment, you draw a chord to make a segment, you're actually making 2 segments, aren't you? Okay, so it's the region of a circle between a chord and the edge of the circle. So we have 2 segments there, a minor segment and a major segment. Now, for this next one, tangent, we're actually going to go outside the circle, because that's where a tangent is. It's something like this. Oh, that's actually not too bad. Yep, I'll leave that one there. Now, a tangent to a circle is a straight line that touches the circumference or the edge of the circle at one point only. It can only be at one point because it's a straight line. If it were a curved line, then it could follow the circumference a little bit. But because it's a straight line, it only touches at one point. Now, the thing about a tangent, another thing to note, if we drew a radius coming out to meet that tangent, something like this, the tangent line and that radius, the line meeting the tangent from the center, they will be at 90 degrees. So that's a little 90-degree angle there. Okay, so a tangent is at one point, a straight line touching the circumference at one point, and where it touches the circle at that one point, it's actually at 90 degrees to the radius coming out. So that's tangent, and that pretty much wraps up the bits and bobs of a circle. What we could do now is put them all together. So let's start with one circle now, and we'll just put everything in. We may as well start with where we just finished off. There we go. That line is our tangent. There we go. We have a radius coming out. This is R for the radius. If we had another one coming out, well, that's a bit long. I'll try and stop at the red. There we go, close enough. If we had 2 radii, then what we have in the middle, in this part here, that is a sector. There we go. So remember, a sector is the wedge shape that's formed between 2 radii. If we went all the way through the circle, from one edge through the center to the other side, what have we drawn? That's right, that's the diameter. D for diameter there. If our straight line doesn't go through the center, but it goes from one part of the circle to another part of the circle, well, that line, the line itself, is the chord, well, a chord, not the chord. So that's a chord, and when we have a chord, that gives us 2 parts. This small part here is the minor segment, minor segment. And the larger part, so all the rest of the circle, would be the major segment. Now, I've got some purple lines in there and I can't colour over them, so if we change our colour now, then we can go, there we go, it worked. All this green stuff is now the big segment, the major segment. So there we go. Do we have everything? There should be 8. What have we got? Segments 1, chord 2, radius, diameter 3, 4, sector 5, tangent 6. We have not done around the outside of the circle. There we go. That's our circumference and part of the way around the outside for our arc. So let's, I don't know, what colour do we want? I guess black will show up against the red. If we just went a small part of the circumference, like this, hopefully that black, I'm just sketching it thick enough so that you can see that part of the circumference is an arc. And of course, if we went, oh, this is going to make it messy, but let's just go like this. There we go, all the way around is the circumference. So there you go. There are our 8 bits and bobs of a circle. Now, actually, before we go, let's just mention one other thing I should have mentioned earlier about the arc. Similar to how I talked about the segment, we had a minor segment, the small part, and the major segment, the large part. Well, in much the same way, this black line here, following part of the circumference, this of course is an arc, yes, but let's actually go ahead and call that the minor arc, simply because it is less than half of the circumference, which then leaves us with the rest of the circumference. Let's say we go from here all the way around the outside of the circle all the way to here. That red line is the, any guesses? That is the major arc. So in much the same way that we had a minor segment and a major segment, likewise we have a minor arc and a major arc. And now we are done with the bits and bobs of a circle.
Don't forget to subscribe and like and comment.